All right, thanks, Mike. We'll come right back to you in a few minutes. But right now, we're also joined, Dan, if you could get this camera shot, we got another meteorologist here, Brian Donegan. All right, thank you. We got Brian Donegan here with us at WTOP-10. He's another meteorologist here. Brian, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Pat.
We're in like crazy storm mode here. So tell me, what are some of the impacts that you foresee with this storm?
Well, here in Oswego, I'm more concerned with the wind than anything else. We're going to get wind gusts up to 70 to 80 miles per hour overnight tonight. So that could mean lots of downed trees, maybe even some power lines if a tree does fall on a power line, which is the best chance of losing power in my opinion.
Right, so the main threat here is for the wind. That's the main story here.
Main story here.
And we got the leaves on the trees still, so that's gonna obviously increase the surface area of the trees where the wind can catch it.
Exactly.
And so we're also looking at now with those leaves, a lot of leaves will be also falling off the trees.
There won't be many left after tonight.
That's true.
No, there won't, but that'll also lead us to another problem: rainfall. Now we're not expecting a ton of rain out of this.
Not a ton, just a couple inch, 2, maybe 3 inches of rain.
Right, which is still a decent amount for any rainstorm. Mm-hmm. The problem with that, though, is that when these leaves come off the trees in these poor drainage areas, you got them, maybe blocking up the gutters or the drains, and so you might actually see some flooding, maybe exacerbated by the fact that these leaves will be falling off the trees, right?
Yeah, that's very true, Pat. There could definitely be people having problems with their gutters, so they could get some water leaking through the roof from the gutter not draining properly, and it could flood their yard just from running down off the gutter.
Right.
And the big puddles in their yard, which could then leak into their basement.
Right, that's true. Yeah. All right, so right now I think we're actually going to send it over to James Gilbert for another update on the storm. He's got, I believe, some information about the impact, so we'll send it over to James now. Do we have any information about the position of the storm, about if it's made landfall or not?
That's something that I can definitely look into. I'm sure if it's not made landfall, it must be very close.
Right.
Because the storm is moving so fast.
Going back to
go ahead.
Sorry, going back to the Atlantic City thing, I saw a picture from this morning, like 8 or 9 o'clock this morning, that there were pieces of the Atlantic City boardwalk that were already floating in water in Atlantic City. It's probably under 3 foot of water by now. It's really incredible.
Easily.
It's something you don't ever see in places like this. You'd think you're looking at, like you said, North Carolina, Florida. It doesn't normally happen in New Jersey or New York.
Right. Here, what we have happening is the water is kind of getting pushed from the east into Long Island Sound, and it has nowhere else. It doesn't have anywhere to go.
That flow has been persistent, too. It just keeps pushing that water.
Right.
So we're going to see, even tonight, I think the storm surge might even be greater with the high tide.
Yeah,
I don't think we even touched on that yet.
High tide, by the way, occurs around 8 o'clock tonight in Atlantic City. So landfall is occurring just before high tide, which I guess helps a little bit, but it doesn't help enough to...
I think we've got a high tide graphic up here. Sorry, James, if you could bring that up. Now, you just highlight something here if you want to read this off.
Yeah, the wind warning from the National Weather Service in Buffalo says that the impacts of strong winds combined with the saturated ground, which is... the ground is definitely saturated, because we've had a wet month, as you said, and we're going to get a lot more rain tonight, inch or two. And it says the saturated ground will result in downed trees, which can block roadways and take out power lines. I mentioned that earlier. The most likely cause of power outage is a tree falling on a power line.
Right.
So if we're getting 70 to 80 mile per hour gusts along the lakeshore, it could easily take down a tree into a power line. We could lose power for a day or two, depends how long it takes them to fix it.
So right now we just got confirmation, if you want to read that off.
Sandy has or is very close to making landfall somewhere near Atlantic City, New Jersey. They've already received, listen to this number, 7.73 inches of rain just in the past 24 hours.
I mean, this is more rainfall that some areas get like in a year.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is just astounding rain amounts, and that's why you're seeing this tremendous amount of flooding. Right now, I want you guys, what other updates do we have on this storm?
I just want to mention that where the eye wall is, that's where the strongest winds are. That's the area around the eye, around the center of the storm. But on the northeast side of the eye wall, that's where the strongest winds are found. So places like New York City, they're probably going to get the strongest of the winds because the storm is passing to their south and west. So up where New York City is, that's where the strongest winds are.
And this was earlier today. I can't even imagine what this looks like right now.
I don't know if I want to know what it looks like right now.
Yeah.
That pier is probably well submerged in the water.
Look at,
it's probably coming well up on shore.
Now this to me looks like some of the piers either near Midtown or they could even be around New Jersey. But regardless, that was this afternoon. The worst of the storm is just moving now. I really want to talk about why New York City is getting hit so hard. I mean, I think they're what, 200 miles disconnected from the center of where the landfall is.
Right.
That's right.
And we're so accustomed with these hurricanes, with these tropical systems, to seeing the worst of the impacts. You always hear about the eye wall. Where is the eye going to make landfall? That's where they're going to get the worst. New York City, being well over 100 miles away from the center, why has it been getting the worst of these effects as opposed to, say, maybe an area that's 20 miles to the south?
Like I mentioned earlier, the highest winds on the northeast side of that eye wall. So the strongest winds right now are over New York City and over western Long Island, and the circulation around the hurricane is a counterclockwise circulation. So those winds are just pushing the waves up onto Manhattan and the other islands of New York City. And there's only so much water that a river can hold. Eventually it overflows its banks and just keeps pouring out in the city. And the flooding doesn't even end when the rain stops because those water levels take a long time to go down.
Yeah, this is not going to be something that just hits and then diminishes. I need to say, everyone, if you want to follow our updates, we've been updating this storm live constantly over the last 24 hours rather. 24 to 36 hours, we've been giving you constant updates on our Twitter. You can follow us at WTOP-10, and you can get all the live updates there and everything, not just Central New York, because I know a lot of students here at SUNY Oswego have family and friends. I know I'm from
New Jersey.
You're from New Jersey.
I'm getting the hardest hit by this storm.
Right, I'm from Long Island in the New York City area, so we understand that many of the viewers have families down this area, and for that reason, our updates have not just been limited to Central New York. We've also been giving updates on New York City. Thank you for joining us for this breaking news update. We'll be back at 10 o'clock, if not sooner. Check our Twitter account for that again, at WTOP10. For the Storm Team here, I'm Chief Meteorologist Patrick Kaplan.
I'm Ryan Farrell.
I'm Brian Donegan.
I'm Mike Stone.
All right, and thank you. And again, join us here again at 10 o'clock for another live update here, live on WTOP10, Oswego, New York.